Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one of those posts covering finance and property news. Monday evening, and Edwin is back, and Edwin is back with a new, improved microphone. Hello, Edwin. Nice to hear you and see you.
Well, I haven't got private emails from our followers and our viewers, Martin, complaining about the noise, the echo of Dusty's studio. So I had to go out and splurge on a new microphone. But I still can't get my other laptop to work. So it's an improvement. It's an improvement. And have you seen my new LinkedIn profile, Martin? I'm back on LinkedIn. I'm going to create a bit of noise and a bit of havoc there on LinkedIn. And I thought I'd put my first story out on LinkedIn after 6 years of not visiting the website. Is selling agents. If selling agents are just order takers, could a robot do the job?
Well, that is, of course, a very interesting question. And welcome back to LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn for years. I think you disappeared 6 years ago, so you're now back. And it's interesting to see what reaction you get on that particular platform as well. I do have a few discussions with people on LinkedIn, but generally people follow me more on Twitter at the moment rather than, or whatever it's now called, X, I suppose. But it is an interesting question. And I don't know whether you saw that there was a fascinating set of articles which came up this week from the AFR about where properties were being listed. And they were talking about a thing called Quiet List, which was launched a year ago, charges a subscription for both buying and sell-side real estate agents. But they said that 1 in 5 homes sold in Sydney last year changed hands without touching the major real estate platforms such as Real Estate and Domain. And perhaps they're then losing millions in potential revenue as sellers go off market. And then they made the point that prices have gone up dramatically for listings, maybe 5,000% over the recent years. And of course, the REA Group is now being investigated by the competition watchdog. Houses can cost up to $6,000 and maybe even $10,000 across multiple portals. And interestingly, they said that often agents skip the for sale listings and then put properties they've sold off market onto the likes of Domain and Real Estate as a marketing tool. So it's really interesting how the industry is shifting. And I think there's a big question about the future of the industry. Now, the role of AI, the role of robots, and all of those questions, and whether those big portals actually are beginning to lose momentum. What do you think?
Well, a number of points here, Martin. I've been saying I called 5-6 years ago. I started saying that the portals themselves were going to begin to lose the revenue stream. More so that they were going to start looking at the $14 billion worth of commissions that are collected across Australia by way of $14 billion worth of commissions annually. And between Domain and Real Estate, they make about $4.5 billion. So look, they want to get a slice of that pie, and hence the reason why they've been increasing the prices. We built these beasts, and now they're biting back. But what the industry has done is the industry, where they would previously, in a lot of cases, 80-90% of the cases, the agency itself would absorb a lot of the marketing costs when it was a lot cheaper. But now, when you're talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a 31 main placement campaign across the eastern suburbs for one property for 30 days, it's highway robbery. But look, it's our fault. When I say our fault, it's the industry's fault for building these beasts and allow them to bite into us, because from 2013, there was this big push for vendor paid advertising. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can look up one of the old posts that I've got there. I was surprised that those articles were still there. and one of them is about vendor paid advertising, how it was highway robbery, because a lot of it gets placed onto the tab for the vendor. So not only does the agent get a commission in a rising market, 1%. Is a lot when you start talking about millions of dollars, and before 3%. What was the going rate? Then we went down to 2%. Then now we're at 1.5% on average across Sydney. But when you start looking at the actual median prices, home values over the years, and you see that 1.5 is a shitload of money. You're talking. You're potentially talking on average about anywhere between $35,000 and $45,000 across the board. And then on top of that, the vendors then pick up the tab for the marketing, because that is how the industry was trained in general. Now, this new website, I've had a sneak peek at it. I've had very little to do with it, but a lot of it is in promotion of new properties, off the plan properties, and trying to put buyers together with that. So it's really buyer beware. And he's trying to put, buyers agents, buyers advocates like ourselves, bringing them in to look at off the plan properties in these scenarios for first time buyers. So it's really be cautious. The other thing that we find, Martin, which I've shared with a lot of our followers and our viewers, and I've shared on the show, is that not a lot of off-market properties are genuinely off-market. They generally ask for a lot more than what you would pay for them when they're on the market. So you've got to be careful when you start associating yourself as, because that portal is predominantly to put together buyers agents and vendors agents in a so-called safe space. Because whatever they deem to be a safe space, a different platform. So I think it's you got to throw caution to the wind. You got to be skeptical. I'm more interested in the mainstream picking up what you and I have been talking about for years, and that is how a lot of properties get sold on and across WeChat, and what happens on that platform. That is more fascinating to me than these westernized portals that try to bring buyers agents and vendors agents to this meeting place, to this they liken it to a date. It's a blind date. You don't know what you're going to get caught up and paying the meal for at the end of the night. So you got to be careful. Look. But good luck to them. It's like everything else. There's a lot of room. People can see that the industry is at the end of the day, it's an 8.5 or $8.7 trillion industry, and when you start talking $15 billion a year in commissions, everybody wants a piece of the action. I myself think that there's that there are other ways and other means that a good tech team could put together. I've seen it all. I've seen it all over the 30 years. But I'm still a believer that a fee for service enterprise or an offering is the future for transparency. To obtain better results and to keep both sides of the fence, the seller side and the buyer side, making it a more transparent process than what it is now.
Well, I think transparency is the key, Edwin. And, my analysis would suggest that it's more difficult these days for individuals to try and figure out what the true value of a particular property is. The information on the portals is very partial, and in some cases delayed, and in some cases inaccurate. And the old mechanisms that were there some years ago, where you could go to the public registries and find values, in some states has disappeared, because now it's all privatized, and that means they're going to charge an arm and a leg to get hold of that data. So it seems to me that we've actually got to the point where it is harder and harder for an individual prospective purchaser to actually get a good handle on what fair value actually is. And to my mind, anything that creates, private portals or private information has the risk of effectively misleading what the true value might actually be. Because I believe that in a fair marketplace, there should be lots of potential buyers and lots of potential sellers. And the more you can share that information, the more perfect the market is. And what we are seeing, I think, is a more and more disrupted market to the benefit prospectively of some people, but against others. And, my general point is this, that if you are a prospective purchaser of a property, you really do need to do that due diligence. But it's harder to do these days because the sources of information are just not available now.
And look, and the unfortunate thing, Martin, is we've over the years and over the decades, we've created a battleground, and that's how it's evolved. It's evolved as a battleground from when it once started as you said, as a transparent process. It's become more and more swayed towards the vendors, but that's always going to happen when you start getting professionals that are dealing in that space. And like I keep on saying, and in the ads that we put across the DFA, the videos that you put out during the week, is that property transactions are very adversarial, and people have got to start learning the fact and getting the message across that you need professionals. You need professionals on your side. Don't use the professionals that the vendors use to think that they're going to make it a lot easier for you. As you say, they use their marketing tools that they use, the building and pest reports, their marketing tools, the shiny brochures, their marketing tools. The fact that they don't disclose material fact is a marketing process. How shady that is. It's each to their own as to how they want to flaunt the legal aspects of property sales and how they want to navigate through the legislation. That's not for us to say what they do. But look, I can tell you now, being involved in the industry for almost 30 years now, and that is that. It's a process where the selling agents want to know less about the property because the more they know, the more they've got to disclose, and that's a fact. So, when in actual fact they should be well versed, and they should be able to teach the vendors or prepare the vendors for any objections in the sales process in order for it to make transparent. Which I think it's you're going to end up with a better outcome. Because you're going to end up with better clients and people that are prepared to pay. And you're going to get to a meeting of the minds. But when it becomes adversarial and you start sticking daggers and throwing napalm and dirty bombs at each other, and the poor bastards that are the purchasers, unfortunately. They go into the battlefield with a flick knife or a butter knife, and they're faced with selling agents that are armed to the hilt, with bazookas and all sorts of shit, and of course they're going to get taken out, and they do, and it's only going to get worse. It is only going to get worse. But what I can say, Martin, on a positive note, is in 2 weeks' time. I'll be launching a new business. It will be published first. It will be advertised first and put first on Walk the World, DFA Monday Evening Property Rants. This is a prelude. Me going back onto LinkedIn is because of that launch, and with it comes great insights into what's happening and what we're going to be able to pass on to our followers and our viewers. And we will be able to help and assist people with information that would otherwise be privy just to selling agents. And this is it's a new direction. So I'm all excited about it. I've sort of hinted as to where we're going, what we're doing, but we'll know more in a couple of weeks. And this is in a way to bring that transparency and bring that that standard that we once had as an industry. And this is why there's been a meeting of the minds with myself and another icon in the industry. we've come together with this new project because we want to go back to the traditional roots of in the standing which the industry once had. But unfortunately, right now we're at the bottom of the pile of 50 most trusted. That census on the most trusted professions, and we sit about 47th or 48th below lawyers of all things and politicians. So but we want to get back up to where we used to be, Martin. So it's not going to get any easier, unfortunately, and people are going to start having to learn, especially when you got the prices that properties are demanding right now. And this is a bit of a plug for my business, but people are going to have to start to learn that they need professionals on their side that are armed with just as many tools and if not more to be able to negotiate on their behalf, especially when you see how they're getting swindled out there on auction days, how they're getting swindled in properties and the information that's passed on by the vendors agents. It's just crazy. It's just crazy not to have people and not to even get those informative reports that you provide also on a one-to-one, Mark.
Well, yes, I'm interested to hear more about that new business in a couple of weeks. I think people will be surprised and will celebrate it, hopefully, because we need to break the nexus. At the moment, it's a very unequal struggle. And it seems to me that a lot of people who clip the ticket on the way through and the intermediaries are actually making a lot of money, but actually it's to the deficit of both prospective purchasers and prospective buyers. So, purchasers and sellers. So, this is a really important point. And I would also make the point, Edwin, this is even more important given the fact that we seem to be seeing censorship arising as well, as you highlighted with this tweet, right? This is quite an interesting one. Censorship of property auctions would start and will be forced to comply. So here you go. Here's a real case study.
Well, this is it, mate. This is the first, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last. I was flabbergasted by that, by X's flagging on that post. I was simply posting fact. The fact is that and we're going to talk a little bit more about that auction later on in the show. But the fact is that this is what happened. This is my, every now and again I like to, an auction that I find that's going to be an interesting auction. I'll do a blow by blow report on it. And you get the increments, what's happening, what people are doing, what's saying, and people like that sort of shit. So I put it out there, and this one was really interesting, and it got really heated, and he got really heated. I mean, the auctioneer was having discussions with the selling agent. I thought they were going to bash each other. It was rather funny and intriguing, and all I did was just report on what was going on, and then I said, put their alarm bells started going off when the selling agent began telling everyone the contract of sale had been amended yesterday, which is a fact, but I put there what the actual F, and then I got flagged. So there you go. So next, Martin, next is you and I are going to get you more than anybody is going to get put away in jail if you mention anything about any property results there in England, because that's the way England's going. Anything that you post on your DFA show, they're going to come knocking at your door. I'll just get deplatformed from YouTube. You're going to end up in jail potentially.
It is remarkable, and fair and open discourse about this stuff is, I believe, very important. And anything that actually works against that, is a concern. And unfortunately, these days, free speech and the ability to be able to express opinions seems to be a bit of a rare commodity. Anyway, we'll carry on as best we can for as long as we can. And look, there's another very important angle here, of course, is to talk about why property prices will not fall dramatically, not least because, of course, the cost of materials are still rising significantly. And back in October 2023, right, you actually made this post, which was highlighting the fact that prices are likely to rise because the cost of construction won't get cheaper.
Yeah, and it was all about the immigration. It was all about who's coming. It was all about the migrants. If you recall, back in 2023, we were being called all sorts of things and labelled with all sorts of names and racist and sons of the devil and Hitler and whatever else. But the thing is, this is reality. And we were talking about this back then, and even before October 2023. We were already saying how the price were going to, and the people that were coming, as much as they were bringing them in by the truckloads, they didn't want to work and they still don't want to work in the construction industry. I mean, like I said before, how many engineers can we bring in to build a high-rise development? How many architects do we need to bring in to build a high-rise development? How many civil engineers do we need to bring in to do a subdivision? How many how many draftsmen do we need to bring in order to build a townhouse development? It's not about the professionals, and it's only of late that the mainstream are reporting how very how minuscule the percentages are of the actual people that want to and are willing to work in a construction site as either labourers or underlings in a particular trade that's required and necessary. But we're bringing in the different type of people that generally don't want to work. These are white collar workers. There's a social class where they're coming from, and they don't want to be writing to mum and dad and saying, "Oh, dear mum and dad, today I worked as a labourer. Today I moved asbestos. Today I swept the fifth floor of a high-rise development." No, they want to write to mum and dad saying, "Look, today I put on my suit and I went to to manage a department in Grace Brothers or David Jones or whatever," and hence the reason why the construction industry is stalled. We also brought up in that segment. We brought up apart from the cost, the fact that developers we're going to be sitting on their hands. That was breaking news, and it's only now that they're talking about it. And it's only now we're hearing also about the sweet deals that the state and federal government are proposing to developers and union bosses in order to get them to break ground, but they still won't because the numbers still don't add up. Last week, the week before the live rant last week, we were talking about how small manufacturing was literally being quartered, were absolutely collapsing. And this is where we are, where we have to import more materials. We're going to have to import more goods, products that we once manufactured, whether it be at small scale, but it was a scale enough to supply the local sites. You got glass manufacturers going bust, and these proposed developments that the state government are put forward as preferred planning developments that would get approved a lot quicker than anything else. I mean, there's more glass in there than you can think of. Then it's crazy stuff. It is crazy stuff in this move towards green and green development. It's just so much more costlier, more expensive, and there's less people that can actually build according to the proposed plans, which is crazy. So here we are. I mean, call us nutcases, call us conspiracy theorists, but it seems like every conspiracy that we brought about on the show is coming to life.
Absolutely. Well, we're just ahead of the curve, as we often say. And of course, Ben Fordham recently highlighted this on 2GB, talking about the manufacturing graveyard, talking about that some of the biggest companies have shut their doors or are teetering on the edge. And we've been talking, of course, there about the issues of the high energy prices and the other high costs. And the construction industry is right in the crossfire here. We know that there have been a lot of building and construction firms who've gone under relatively recently. We know that there are significant pressures on many. And yet, of course, if you look at places like this is actually, spruiking a development at 177 Walker Street in North Sydney, the artist's impression of the Walden with the launch of new premium residential tower there. And they say that they've sold a good proportion of the properties. So there's still a lot of spruiking around. And when you actually look at the story of this, it's all about top end stuff. Here's another example here in the West End up in Brisbane. Again, talking about riverfront projects. This is high end stuff. This is not the sort of development that's going to be required to solve the housing affordability issue. This is about maximizing the return to the construction sector at the high end of the market. But this is nothing about the real issue that we are dealing with. So there's nothing here that's going to stop the momentum, in terms of the lack of supply of property. Therefore, prices will go higher. Put the construction costs over the top of that. Put the poor quality construction into the mix as well. And it doesn't surprise me that we are finding that more and more people are saying, I'm not interested in buying high rise at the moment, right? It doesn't make any sense.
No, Martin, and there should be, and this is a warning to anybody that's going to buy into these developments with a lot of glass. A lot of that glass has to be what they call self-cleaning glass. Self-cleaning glass at the moment, the current rate, the wholesale rate is about $1,500 to $1,800 per square meter. That shit is really heavy and very, very expensive. That's per square meter. And then when you start talking about sheets that are 2x3, then you start talking about cranes, then you start talking about the delivery, and this stuff ends up being closer to $5,000 a square meter by the time it's fixed. So so what's going to end up happening? And let's not. As I always keep on saying, when people start going off about high-rise development in the many cycles that I've been involved with high-rise development and how the ups and the downs, and that is the story is part of the story is only how quickly the development sold off the plan. The real story is going to be whether or not the developer is going to have his backside sticking out of his pants at the end of the project, or he's going to cancel the contract because of some clause in there, and he's not going to fulfill the contract. He's going to annul the contract and then charge more in order to complete, or he's going to go bust. So the chances of the people not actually getting the keys, in my opinion, is it goes down to 1 in 3 chance of actually obtaining the keys and settling, because this is what usually happens with these type of developments. So that's just my 2 bobs worth there. And as you said, and this is why I was very critical of the proposed 10,000 apartments in around Darling Point and the like, and that area there where they're looking at rezoning the old station there. We're talking by the time they finish, those 2-bedroom apartments are going to have to be sold for $2.3 million in order for the developer to make any money whatsoever, for the banks to fund the developer. Otherwise, the banks aren't going to fund. If you can't show a minimum of 22% profit over the gross realization, that's because that's what gives you the buffer. The banks are going to be very, very hesitant to lend the money. That's the second point. The third and most critical point, Martin, is we're talking about shit that's, even if they started digging today, as I keep on saying, people aren't going to get the keys for another 5 to 6 years anyway. So in the meantime, everybody else in the first home buyers can whistle Dixie and fight for the scraps out in Mount Druitt and out west and beyond. For fibre homes, dilapidated fibre homes that are now pushing the $1 million, because that's all that's left, and nothing else is happening. This is crazy, because, as you said, it's not going to, it's not even going to put a dent into the supply that's required, because the left nor the right want to do anything about the immigration policy that the government is currently running under.
Well, absolutely right. And from a policy perspective, it's also worth just noting that the latest expectations are that maybe interest rates could stay higher for longer. Not least, of course, because of the fact that inflation is quite a lot stronger and the jobs market is a little bit more significant. The BIS found that if you look at the wages unit labour costs, Australia is just behind Great Britain, but right at the top of the list there. So they're talking here about significant economic pressures, which could lead to the fact that the interest rates won't be as low as people were expecting, and that's going to put more pressures on as well. So that's another factor to bear in mind here when you try and actually work out what is likely to happen. And I agree with you. There's a difference between the planning and the selling of prospective deals and actually the execution and delivery of those deals. And the reports that I've seen suggest that even, standard houses are taking longer to deliver compared with 2 or 3 to 5 years ago. And as for high rise, well, in many cases, the duration of the construction period is now double what it was because the productivity of the industry is so poor. And of course, they turn around and say, oh, that's because of all the supervision, it's all of those rules and regulations. No. It's because they're blooming inefficient. They're actually poorly architected from the very start, and the quality of construction is so poor on the way through. And the construction industry doesn't want to commit itself because they are not sure they're going to make money out of it. So all of those things are in the mix. And I think that when you sort of stand back and think about that, you got to say that the whole set of policy suites from both state and federal governments are pretty broken. And, you can talk about the NIMBYism, and there's still a lot of discussion here about, get out of my backyard or, allow us to build here, the NIMBY. But the NIMBY conversation, to my mind, is a bit of a furphy. It's not a fundamental issue that we should be talking about. And yet there's more verbiage written about NIMBYism, and it keeps being reported in the papers and anything else. And of course, that's because it's a politically popular thing to be talking about. We do stuff, but unfortunately, the local neighborhood doesn't want us to do it. Well, it's easy to blame them, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, it comes back to the voting blocks, right? It comes back to the voting blocks, and the voting block that's going to vote the same party that we've now currently got in power in the next election is going to be the young people, and the swing that I said will occur. There's no doubt about it will occur, because just before the election they'll start talking about pulling back on negative gearing, and also tapering down on the CGT and so forth, and that is a favourable topic in the social media circles, which is mainly populated with the young people, not the old. Not the older retiring generations that just want to, get on the Harley Davidsons and ride around Australia, or get in the Winnebagos and drive around Australia. They've just had it. So that is the voting block that is going to be that they've got to appease, and they've got to buy their votes in order to get through. So that's what I'm saying. It's more of a political rhetoric than actual action, and that's what it comes down to, Martin. Because otherwise we would have a real policy about we will put some sort of what would you call it? Put bridle on the bloody unions, because everything is because when you start getting into big developments, who's in charge? You're not in charge. The developer isn't in charge anymore. The unions are in charge. So and that's what I just see on the ground. That's what I see. The talk amongst the developers, and hence the reason why they want these certainties. They want to see the cash in the bank in order for them to take that risk. They're not before developers. The developers were very, very They weren't risk averse. They just jump in, boots and all. But now they've learned their lesson. And one of the things they've realised more and more, whether it's the left or the right, they will put their hands in the pockets in order to get this thing going. And right now, the developers have got the rifle over the heads of the government. They're not going to move. Apart from the three main groups that they're just forever, keep the machine rolling, and High Rise Harry is one of them because he's his own bank and he's his own, he's his own industry. He's at a different level. Everybody else that's required to join in, they're not going to join in because they've learned their lessons. And they're not going to take the risk. But there is a little bit of light ahead of us, Martin, with some of the progress. But unfortunately, it's not what the young people and what the first-home buyers would want to otherwise think that it's going to come and save them. They've got another, as I've been saying, they've got another 5-7 years of pain before anything happens there, if it happens.
Yeah, I think the big if, and in fact, there was this article which I thought was quite interesting, quoting Senator Andrew Bragg saying Labour is so bad at housing, they can't even spend the money they constantly brag about. And of course, this is the HAF, the government fund that was meant to be investing in a lot of housing. But basically, they're saying it's not working, the money isn't flowing, and getting anything close to the target, the aspirational targets, just isn't feasible. And, we've been saying this for a long, long time, that the whole issue here is simply about the words rather than the deeds, right? Labour can talk about what they're going to do. They can point to the HAF, but everything that we see suggests that there's a disconnect between the words and actions. And for the reasons that we've been discussing, the chances are that the housing situation is going to get worse, not better, over the next 2 to 3 years. High migration, of course, continues. We've got a lack of approvals coming through. We've got high pressure on the costs of construction, and we've still got a lot of demand. And then, of course, we've got the government now stoking the first-time buyer story, as we discussed in our live show last Tuesday. And I think this is a remarkable additional kick in the guts for many people because, frankly, it's making it even more difficult. In fact, I made a show at the weekend called First-Time Buyers in Wonderland because I went through all of the issues for first-time buyers and looked at things like the banker mum and dad and how much support they can get from state and federal. There's a lot of money being thrown out there at prospective first-time buyers. And, of course, the other factor, is, 1 October, we're going to see more first-time buyers being allowed to effectively get bigger mortgages with more government support. But it's not solving the fundamental structural issues that we have. And there is no intent. This is the point I get frustrated about, Edwin. To my mind, there is no fundamental intent from the government to really do the things that need to be done to fix what is now a housing disaster.
Yeah, look, I'd love to get the Minister for Housing to come with me on a Saturday and drive her around and actually get them to see what is happening on the ground and what is evident. Even prior to the 1st of October, what the prelude of this, when the announcement was made, you and I started talking about it as it was going to be made and since it was made and what it's meant and what it's happened actually on the ground as I've been reporting again on the auctions that I attend to and what I see in the conversations that I have with a lot of agents. And I put that up on one of the videos as well in my Just Think One video that I created so I can get that information across during the weeks. Now, and this is it. And this story here is the epitome of what you and I have been talking about and the concerns that you and I have had for many years, and what people are saying, and how it's just culminated into this, and seeing it live is actually. Like I said, it's interesting but frightening. I mean, words just I'm lost for words to describe what actually happens. But in this particular this particular auction, you can see the video there that the people can see, and I took a quick video. Now, I wasn't attending the auction for a client. We weren't attending the auction for a client, and we're just looking in the area because we've got a client that we just signed up in around the area that wants to look in that, in the Guildford, Maryland's, Granville area, wants to buy a principal place of residence there. So we're just looking around, and I was just doing a bit of scoping the land and scouting the land, and I came across this auction. I wanted to see what was going on, and before I got all the information, from the back end of the portals that we use to get historical information and data and everything, before I even went in there, I started noticing that the home had just been newly renovated. There was an extension put on, so there was a lot of work that's being done to the property since it was purchased. It was only purchased a year ago for $1,050,000. I found out from the agent that the developer had spent about $130,000 to do a quick renovation. He's a developer, so he had excess materials from one of his development sites, a small unit block site, and he just used that to do the reno on this house. And this is just a quick 5-minute observation, walk through the house, looking around and seeing, and I could already see if I was looking at this for a client, the questions that I would be asking the agent and the questions that I would be also pursuing with the local council and the certificates that I would be requesting prior to attending the auction. As I said, I just turned up on the day. So this is just my information on the day and the information that I was able to obtain on the day from the selling agent as well as the auctioneer, because I know them well. I've known them for quite a number of years. So there's no OC to the extension. There's to the works that have been done, to the extension at the front and at the rear. There's the owner had purposely put in the contract of sale that there's no homeowner warranty insurance. With this, comes with this property. So, given the fact that there's no homeowner warranty insurance, that there's no OC, then all sorts of alarm bells start ringing, because without doing, as I said, without going to the council, without getting further information and seeing the plans, the engineering plans, everything else that we would otherwise do for a client, the alarm bells will start ringing. But outside of that, that was just the tip of the iceberg. So as I went to the front to where they were registering the buyers, there was 8 registered bidders. One of them registered on the day without even doing any due diligence. They just come and saw the inspected the home. They liked it. They said they had the money in the bank that could buy it. If they were the successful bidder, they could buy it. They hadn't even looked at the contract to look at the special conditions. Nothing, right? That's why was all this happening? Because of this fear of missing out. That this 5% gift or assistance that the government's been giving, like this new package deal that the government's given to first-time buyers. They can buy a house with a 5%, and they'll foot the rest of the mortgage insurance and so on and so on. So that's created more of a demand. People are losing their heads over getting into the market, especially at these price points around the 1.3, anything from 1 to 1.3, and so seeing this now as the registrations were being written up, were being signed in, the participants were being registered. The selling agent starts making an announcement that the contract of sale had been amended the night before, not the day before, which being a Friday, not the morning of Friday, not lunchtime Friday, but the night before. And if you're going to participate in the auction, we would strongly recommend that you read you read the amendments. They didn't allude to what was amended in the contract. So was one of the amendments the fact that in the special conditions that I was privileged to see, because I could scan through the contract fairly quickly, I was on the table, that there was no homeowner's warranty insurance, and the fact that I could put two and two together, work out the fact that if there's no homeowner warranty insurance, that therefore it would more than likely mean that there's no occupation certificate, which would more than likely mean that the extensions to the front and the rear of the property aren't council approved, and so on, right? That would be my alarm bells ringing. But Martin, they weren't phased. Why? Because they didn't want to miss out. They weren't phased at all, and this is what these policies have created. Now, to put the cherry on top of the cream, the auctioneer, obviously, they know, and the auctioneers, no doubt, in a lot of other auctions, have been pushing the fact of short supply, and the fact that there will be a new tranche of buyers coming in as of next week, and you better make your move now, and bid hard, bid strong. So this is the auctioneers. So more of that fear mongering in order to get people to buy. The house got sold for $1,396,000. The hammer dropped, but the poor bastards that bought it, I can guarantee you, Martin, they don't know what they bought, and that could potentially be surprised if the council come knocking at the door and get issued with the demolition order. Who knows?
Well, I think there's another object lesson there, isn't there, about doing your due diligence. We can only say it so many times, Edwin. Do your due diligence. And it's a really, really, really important conversation particularly this time. And what I'm concerned about, Edwin, is that there are a lot of people who are piling in and thinking of piling in and not thinking through the consequences. So there were a couple of articles this week about the fact that first-time buyers are getting older as Aussies sign up for mortgage debt into their 60s. There was actually some reporting from Westpac Lending showing that effectively people are getting mortgages later, which means they're going to have them still into retirement. That's going to be a problem. The average house formulation is now roughly 10 years later than it used to be. And there's research quoted here from the Australian Housing and Urban Research Institute showing that 54% of 55 to 64-year-olds and 9% of over 65 still have mortgage debt in 2019. But of course, that's going to rise a lot higher now. And again, this was reported elsewhere, retiring with a dead weight, buying 20 years ago means we'd have ridden the massive growth wave, but, you're trying to do it now. And, well, changing buyer profiles and outdated policies will leave homeowners with debt in their golden years. Absolutely, there will. And here's the catch. If you are actually a retirer and you're in the rental sector and you move into retirement, the cost of renting is now higher than it ever was. So there are a lot of renters in their retirement years who are absolutely under the gun. I see that in my surveys. But also, I'm seeing more and more people moving into retirement still with a large mortgage. And it's going to get worse because it's actually getting even more later now when people start this journey of the mortgage. So when they move into retirement, what do? Well, option one is perhaps to grab some of the superannuation and pay off the mortgage and then go on to the government pension. Well, that wasn't really quite the model that people had. Or do they go on paying the mortgage, which means working for longer and longer and not retiring? And so in my one-to-one conversations, I'm having quite a few people now highlighting this dilemma that they find themselves in because their plans are being disrupted by the fact that they've got this mortgage for longer. In some cases, they've restructured the mortgage through the life because they couldn't afford to make the repayments. And so their mortgage is now another 5 years longer than it was previously. It's a mess. And, some of this is now coming home to roost. And, as I often remind people, Edwin, when you make a decision about buying a property, don't just think about now. You need to think ahead as well. not just 2 years, 5 years, but, a bit further than that, because a mortgage is, well, it's a death contract, isn't it? It's until it's paid off. And that's something to bear in mind. And then just to sort of spin it back, I'm also interested that there was a couple of articles this week talking about, well, we need to find places where, you can find the sort of amenities that you want, and this article suggests that down traders don't want to move too far away from, things like shops and coffee shops and, the doctors and places like that. So they're saying that according to this particular piece of research, Chatswood is on the list of Sydney's high amenity suburbs, according to Ahari. And they're saying that is where a lot of down traders are searching. So that's sort of one side of the story. But then, of course, as you've highlighted in one of your articles for this week's, well, sometimes maybe you need to think differently if you're thinking about retirement living. And there's a title here saying, baby boomers take retirement living to new heights. Instead, they've chosen a new apartment in Australia's tallest retirement village, a 28-story tower called the Cambridge, nearby Epping in Sydney's northwest. Now, it may be 3 minutes walk to the metro, and there are lots of restaurants, etc., but hang on a moment, just think about that. People are retiring into high-rise apartments. Well, to my mind, this is now full circle. First-time buyers being sucked into buying high-rise, and now retirees being sucked into the high-rise. What's the common theme? High-rise.
High-rise. Well, the thing is, Martin, as I said, since I wrote that article for one of the investment magazines, back in the day, and I've been talking since early to mid 2000s, and that is that the solution to a lot of these to the downsizers, down traders as you call them, and the empty nesters is it's always the small to medium density developments, from your townhouses, villas, and also the small small 4-story, 5-story or apartments that would accommodate the empty nesters, because they're not really in the grand scheme of things, they're not really that high, apart from this tower stands out on its own. But most of the towers that you start to look at that could be built and it would accommodate, and the article alludes to and concurs with my thoughts and what you and I have been sharing for a while, and that is the medium-sized developments where you could accommodate that type of bigger apartments. They'll be costlier and they'll be purpose-built for the empty nesters and for the people that don't want to move away. People don't want to move away from where they've spent the last 40, 50, 30, 40, 50 years of their lives, especially if they're going to be moving away from family, from the medical care, the local GPs, and the friends. And this is where if people, as I said, the unfortunate thing is that the NIMBYs have created they're going to fall on their own sword, because not allowing the medium density developments to be built in their backyard means that guess what? They've got nowhere to go, and this is why the transactions are going to be harder to come by in those sought after areas. And this is why you and I go around and talk around for a while, and this is why not a lot is happening by way of real numbers, housing numbers on market, because there is nowhere really for them to go. So they prefer to stay put in the big homes, dilapidated homes, older homes that require a lot of maintenance, and the homes unfortunately are falling around them, and the unfortunate thing is, like, you can't eat. You can maybe chomp on the grass every now and again, but you can't eat the bricks and mortar, regardless of the fact that your place is worth $2, $3, $4, $5 million, and it's becoming more and more costly to maintain them. So we're in a vicious circle, and yet the government, their solution is high-rise development. High-rise, we're talking about towers, 60, story towers, 50-story towers, 60-story towers, and this and that. We got to step it back a bit. But look, it's a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, I think, with this company that potentially could take things a bit further all around Sydney. And there are some good sites, and you don't need a big block of land or big land envelope in order to build, an apartment block of 30, 25, 30, 40 unit to accommodate the downsizes, which would make more sense then you'll kind of put everybody in a high-rise development, because you still haven't solved the solution of where, housing for, because this development that's been discussed here in the AFR by Michael Blevel is the purpose built for retirees. So there's a lot more to this development than just your slapped up block of units by an ABC developer.
Yeah, but I wonder whether the quality of construction will be there. I don't know. And, the other interesting issue, of course, with the high rises, you've got the strata fees, which can be significant and rising. And again, I have quite a few conversations with people who've been caught with rising strata fees over the years. And the other point is that if you've actually got one of N 100 units in a high-rise apartment building dedicated to retirees, it's not a very distinctive offering when you come to sell it later, right? And I always worry about this. And up in the northwest of Sydney, I do note that the height of values in some of these areas were 2017, and since then prices have gone down. So you wonder whether this is actually a good capital investment as well as the lifestyle investment, and it's tricky for people. So I would just remind people to go careful and just think this through quite deliberately. But I do see in my research, and I research specifically the intentions of down traders, there's a massive overhang of people who desire to move somewhere smaller, somewhere somewhere easier to look after, some less complex. And also a desire as part of that process to buy something smaller and release capital, either to pass to kids or to invest in other things or whatever. So there is a real pent-up issue with regard to this down trader community. And at the moment, the market is really not addressing that need particularly well. And I'm not sure whether these high-rise solutions that we're seeing here really is going to be that attractive to many people. And of course, the other issue...
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they set 55s. They stopped building them because, in essence, it comes back to the what the developer is going to get at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
So, that's why even in Chatswood, there's a developer in Chatswood that's actually I'm not sure the exact already building them, but Dusty was talking to them not too long ago, and they were getting plans amended to accommodate four-bedroom apartments in the high-rise development. This is your standard high-rise development. They were merging two-bedroom units in order to create four-bedroom apartments to cater for the Asian community that were moving back into Australia. That had already left China, obviously what we call the Hong Kongese and the Malaysians and Singaporeans, Asian people that were stationed in those countries, in those parts of the world, that are now coming to Australia to accommodate them, because they are used to living in high-rise developments. They are used to that lifestyle. They are used to the extra payments and the money that they're bringing. They don't really care about the ongoing costs. They do and they don't, in the sense, because of the amount of money and capital that they're bringing back into the country. These are people that are holders of PR and so forth. So, but this is where the industry is going. But it will make a lot more sense to alleviate a lot of and to release a lot of these older properties. Because the other thing is, Martin, a lot of the younger generation, they don't want to. They themselves don't want to venture further out than the neighbourhood that they grew up in, and this in itself creates more of more issues as well, and hence the reason why they become a very vocal voice on the social media platforms, and this is why the government moves according to that voice, according to the noise that they themselves hear on the social media, and they think they're doing the right thing by throwing money at the problem, throwing taxpayers' money at the problem. When in actual fact they're creating a greater problem. As we've been saying for a while now, is that it's not going to be very much longer. We've only got a few more months to go, and I'm still adamant that we're going to get to the lower hundreds of $1 million homes in the Sydney region, because they're disappearing very, very quickly because of all this money that's been thrown out. It's creating all this need to jump in, and also when you start looking at which we haven't really talked about, but we can talk further in another day, is the pressure, the rental pressure that's bringing more and more investors into the arena as well to compete. So prices are only just going up for freestanding homes, and freestanding homes to villas to townhouses. Things aren't going to change the way that many would like to change, and even the markets, the top end. When I say top end, your $5, $6, $7, $8 million home are starting to rise a little bit again. It's starting to pick up like that a bit of a lifeline again, because a rising tide lifts all boats. So sooner than later, that's going to get to those levels as well.
Absolutely. And I'll just one last quick point. I lived in an apartment right in the centre of Melbourne in 1998. I was one of the early adopters of apartment living. And I learned two things from that. The first is noise, particularly noise through the night from neighbours, was actually quite significant. But the other was the external noise. What I mean by that is the dust cart that comes through at 4 a.m. to empty the bins from the shops just around the corner would wake me up every night. And I never got used to it I lived there for 2 years, and I worked just around the corner. So it was quite easy. I could walk to work, but the noise. And I think one of the things that people need to consider when they're thinking about high-rise living, whether they're younger or whether they're older, is the question of noise, and particularly at night. And one of the questions I always suggest to people is you should ask the architects about what they've done, if it's a new high-rise, with regard to the alleviation of noise transmission between apartments, not least because, of course, noise travels up escalators, it travels up lifts, and it travels up plumbing and other amenities, air conditioning, etc., etc. And quite often, what I found, having spoken to a number of people on this, is that the noise is coming through the air conditioning system.
Especially those centralized air conditioning units.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, noise, smells, you get badly managed complexes, and then you get rodent infestation throughout the whole floor, and the list goes on. And this is why a lot of the regulations. But the funny thing is, to round the discussion off before we go into the numbers, Martin, with all this, right, all these concerns, all these issues, all these pressures, all these around construction, around ongoing maintenance and cost of materials and everything. What's the solution? What's the government solution? What's the housing minister want to do? They want to stay the NCC, the National Construction Code. They want to put that. Hey, hold on a minute. Let's not supervise the work. In other words, now that's the NCC is the issue. The standard of construction is the issue, according to them. It's not all the red tape. It's not all the dodginess that goes on with unions. It's not the the cost. It's the NCC, right? What's the only thing that's barely protecting the consumer. They want to sort of dumb that down so that builders can build a lot quicker. So it's crazy. It's absolute crazy. The world's just upside down.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Well, let's look at the numbers. I'm going to start with looking at this. This is the AFR report, Grand Final Fever Cramps auction numbers, and they are saying the auctions fell by a third as Melbourne, the nation's auction capital, interesting, enjoyed the AFL Grand Final long weekend. But I thought this was interesting. SQM Research Director Louis Christopher was quoted as saying the national property market favours sellers, but it wasn't booming. If sellers want to sell in this market, they do need to meet the market to an extent. Otherwise, they're going to struggle to sell if they overprice a property. We've got a 5% deposit scheme kicking in, and that's likely to mean it will see an increase in demand in late spring months going into December. So that was, I think Lou is on the same page with regard to that. Oh, and by the way, to the main data, which of course, again, misleads insofar that it still gives this number sold versus number reported compared with number sold versus number listed. And of course, those numbers are very, very different. So superficially, you'd say, well, hang on a moment, what is really going on? But actually, when you delve into the numbers in a bit more detail, it's really quite interesting, and not least interesting between what's happening in Melbourne and in Sydney. And maybe we'll start with Sydney. This is based on the domain definition. So on the 23rd of September, there were 22,040 properties for sale in the Sydney region. On the 29th, 21,797. So there was a fall. In Melbourne, on the 23rd, there were 25,767, 26,123 a week later. So what on earth is going on between Sydney and Melbourne, Edwin?
Oh, it's everybody wants to get out of Melbourne, man.
Yeah,
they still want to get out. Like I said, any investor that's jumped the gun and wants to, and thinks that the market's bottomed out in Melbourne is a little bit loopy, loco, as we say in Spanish. But no, look, each to their own. They call the market on their own. We believe in the WeChat charters are still wanting to jump out. Man, is still wanting to jump out because of this, and we're going to get a lot more issues. And I believe, there's going to be a lot more people wanting to, depart from Melbourne, exodus Melbourne, because of the social scenes that are occurring. We won't go into detail, but it's certain scaring people away. So it's just. The numbers will continue to rise. Sydney's not moving the way that a lot of people were saying it was going to move. That the numbers were going to increase, especially the desirable properties, which are your freestanding homes. They've picked up a little bit, but not that much. But it has certainly been a time, and it will continue to be a time for the next few weeks, as Louis says, especially moving into the towards the end of the spring selling season. And I think that's a call for a lot of investors that are going to offload a lot of their lemons. And this is why I was saying, buyer beware, caveat emptor. If the onus is on you to beware and be cautious as to what you're going to chase and what you're going to outbid your opponent on the day.
Absolutely. Well, yes, be very, very cautious at the moment. I think in Brisbane, 3,232 on the 23rd, compared with 3,168 a week later. So it's a little bit of a slide there. In Brisbane is some hanging around the same numbers for quite some time, still quite tight. And looking at the auctions, well, you can see here that the statistics are a little bit off, potentially ahead, but I'm not quite sure. It's interesting if you compare this week with the same week in 2024, it's not looking flash.
No, the numbers are still very weak when you start comparing week on week from 2024. Again, the mainstream media don't want to talk about it because it obviously it means less marketing revenue for the portals, which means less marketing revenue for the publications, for the because they all get a slice of the pie on the sales of properties. But yeah, so look, the numbers are still tracking a lot lower. Hopefully, I'll have my old laptop where I've got the Excel spreadsheet where I could come up with a graph, so I can put the graph together, and it gives us a better visual of the market, auction landscape in 2024 and the auction landscape in 2025. There was an article that I didn't put in the notes for our conversation for today, and it was from the real estate magazine, and that was an industry magazine. And it talked about how the public in general were very discontent with the real estate industry, and hence the reason why they're looking at options. Hence the reason why people are going to be looking at options. But look, people are going to be more cautious because they are demanding higher prices now. And if you want to obtain, again, whether you're a vendor or whether you're a purchaser, you really need to know that you've got the right professional on your side working for you, not working for themselves after a quick buck, especially if you're on the selling side of things. And that's the unfortunate thing, and that is why the industry over the last 12 months, I think it's done more damage to itself with the bad publicity, with all sorts of things that have been happening. And one of the latest one was that individual that's hoodwinked an elderly gentleman in their 80s of their home, and all they're going to get is a slap in the wrist so far for a cancellation of the license for 12 months, which is again a regulator that's pretty much got blunt teeth. That should be kicked out of the industry altogether, as far as I'm concerned. But hey, we don't know the full facts. But again, that was something that we spoke about on the show over a year ago when I was alluding to the investigations that were happening, and it took him a year to get to this point. But back then, the people that shared with me that story, then I shared on the Monday evening rants what was going to happen. It's taken over 12 months to get to where we are, and this is the unfortunate thing, Martin, is where the slow walk of justice to get to this point, and to really deal with the dregs that are operating in the industry. It's the unfortunate thing. And again, we go back to where we started at the beginning of the show, and that is that the industry needs a lot more clarity and a lot more transparency.
Absolutely. Well, never more so. Just looking at the rentals briefly. So this is the story in Sydney on the 23rd. 9,825 properties for rent in the Sydney region. 9,845 a week later. In Melbourne, 11,076 on the 23rd and 11,067 the following week. So it's still pretty tight. And again, I noticed that in the latest CPI figures, rents are still rising, not quite as fast. But again, as I discussed with Tarek last Friday, in fact, the numbers are quite distorted relative to, for example, what CBA is reporting in their data or what I'm seeing in my data. And I think there's a big question as to whether the CPI really reflects the truth with regards to rental growth. A lot of people are still being confronted with very large rent increases, and those don't necessarily seem to me to be being picked up in some of the official statistics. It's funny that. Well, as we come to the end of the show, Edwin, you've got a really, really important tip here. And, we've highlighted the fact that people must be really careful. And that includes also being really careful about the contracts.
Yeah, look, you really need to get the conveyancer or solicitor to go through the contracts with a fine-tooth comb. There's a lot more shenanigans that are going on. When we've been talking about it again in the Monday evening rant for a while, of spoken about on X, and I'll certainly be making a lot of noise on LinkedIn now that I'm back on with regards to the shenanigans that go on, being measured, of course, but being factual. and just putting the warnings out there. But if you're not going to tell your conveyancing, if you're not going to tell your solicitor that's doing the conveyance for you that you suspect or you can see, or the agents telling you that there's a renovation or an extension, more to the point, to the property just being recently done, if you're not going to tell them, they're not going to necessarily know, because most of them will do won't do a lot. And because the certificates aren't in the contract, they won't know whether there was an extension being done to the property. And if there was an extension being done to the property, if you can notice it, you got to query it and ask for those certificates, or make your conveyancer or your conveyancing solicitor aware of it, so that they can ask the other side formally. And if the other side don't want to produce it, well, then you've got to decide whether or not you're going to be purchasing the property, or doing further due diligence, through different channels that you can obtain, and so on. And otherwise, but the unfortunate thing, Martin, is time. The timing and the lack of supply, and when people see something that's been done up, polished up, a lot of these homes in the desired areas are going within a week of being put on the market, or within 2 weeks. And a lot of them, as we've discussed on the show, that they're being sold before auction. So you've got very little time, but it's a high risk. And unless you know what to look for, unless you've got professionals on your side to look for it, that know what to look for and know what to ask and what to get in a matter of days, well, it's a big risk. And it could end up potentially being a very, very costly decision, not only because you're going to be paying top dollar for it, but also the ongoing cost post the purchase, which we've been sharing some videos on, and I've been sharing some posts on X with regards to people believing the selling agent and believing the dodgy documentation that they at times provide.
That's what we say. It's a point in time event when you purchase, but the consequences continue to roll out over the following months and years. And if you have problems, it's going to be very costly. Well, we come to the end of the show. I will just remind everybody that tomorrow, the final part of my series on first-time buyers and avoiding the property trap is with Be Right. And that's at 8 p.m. Sydney tomorrow. So join us for that last part of the conversation. And actually, Aaron turned up with this post on Twitter, which I thought was quite funny. So he's going to explain tomorrow on the show why he's wearing a snorkel mask and a Christmas sweater. And it's all to do with the warning that he's got with regard to prospective first-time buyers not knowing what they're doing. And, it very much is in line with some of the things that we've been saying, Edwin. So that should be a fun show tomorrow. Anyway, congratulations on the new audio. It was perfect today. So I hope people enjoyed that and got the full weight of your thoughts. And have a great week. And I'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, Edwin. Take care.